But the John McCain of 2000 wouldn't consider voting for the John McCain of 2008. That is a fact. He was for immigration reform before he was against it. He was against the Bush tax cuts before he was for it. And he thought it was a great idea for George Bush to veto the S-chip program to give our kids health care. We can have a different country. We can have a better country. We can have change. But we need to have Barack Obama. We need to have Shelley Pingree. We need to have Tom Allen. I think Mike Michaud is going to get reelected, so he better get reelected, so we certainly need him. I started out by saying that I was going to put you to work, and I am. You know, we've done a lot of new, different things since I took over the Democratic National Committee. And one of the things that we did was, of course, the 50-state strategy. We've actually helped the Maine Democratic Party with their voter lists and with staff here and so forth, and every other party in the state, in the country. But one of the things we did was to start to learn more about how to win, because we hadn't done much of that in the last 35 years. And in Virginia, in 2005, we did an experiment. We agreed to pay for about 20% of the governor's election budget, which is a lot of money, on the condition that he'd let us go in and do some experiments in Virginia, which is a pretty classical American state, which we think we can win. We think we will win in Virginia this time. And what we did was, as a good doctor, of course, we had 6 control groups. And we had a certain group of voters that only got those lovely robocalls that you all like so much. Then we had another group that just got direct mail, another group that was targeted with certain newspaper ads, another group that was television targeting, and so forth and so on. And a group that had college students knocking on the doors in the last 3 weeks. All those groups saw their turnout increase by 1 to 2.5%. Now, 1 to 2.5% is nothing to be sneezed at. A lot of races have been won and lost by 1 or 2.5%. But there was one group that had their turnout increase by 12%. That was a group that did the following. They knocked on 25 doors 3 or 4 times over the 3 to 4 months before the election in their neighborhood, where they either personally knew the person whose door they were knocking on, or they had it in common that they lived in the same neighborhood and their kids went to the same schools and so forth and so forth. Or the kids from the school knocked on them, counting on the local school, from the local school board. Now, the reason that worked is because, I think some of you who remember my campaign, what we talked about is you have the power. You have the power to change the country. Well, in fact, you do. The fact is, you as an individual, talking to somebody you know, are more powerful than Rush Limbaugh and Bill O'Reilly and all those icons of the right, because people know you. And they'll vote for you. And vote for the person you ask, if you take the time to ask them and be their friend. So what I want you to do is sign up for something called the Neighborhood Leadership Program. You can sign up for the Maine Democratic Party. You can go online and look at Democrats.org. It's pretty much fun. It's pretty high tech. We use a global positioning service to superimpose on our incredible voter list the locations of your 25 closest neighbors that we'd like you to talk to. If you had a big fight with them 25 years ago and you haven't spoken to them since, you can send us that address back. We can send you another address. Depending on what, you can download literature. You can sign it yourself, or have it be the Portland Democratic Party, or the, whatever you want. And you can rearrange it a little. If you're in your congressional district, if you think one issue is more important than another, you can rearrange your own campaign literature. If in your neighborhood the photographs of the people there don't look anything like the people that are really in your neighborhood, we've got a whole lot of other pictures that do look like people in your neighborhood. You just take them out and just stick them in the campaign literature, download it. This is ready-made campaign literature for you to use. But we need you, whether you use the campaign literature or not, we need you to knock on doors. Now, I love competition. And Oregon took this program and they decided they were going to knock on 40 doors 4 times between now and the election. All right, so are you guys going to beat Oregon? 40 doors 4 times? When you think about it, I want you to think about this for a minute. When you think about all the doors people knock on in campaigns, 40 doors is not a lot of doors. You can knock on 40 doors in a day and a half. 4 times. 6 days to make sure this country changes fundamentally and is a fair country and a proud country is not a lot to invest in the next 4 months. And if you don't do it, we're not going to win. And I think Barack's going to do pretty well in Maine. But we want Tom Allen to win, and that's going to be a really close race. And you can put Tom Allen in the United States Senate if you will do this. You can. And we need Mike to be re-elected. We need Shelley to be elected. You can do those things. But you can't do it just by writing checks for robocalls or sending the targeted literature and all that stuff. You have got to have person-to-person contact. And I just want to say one thing about young people. We talked about young folks. Don't underestimate how much power you have. I'll tell you as a person who is about to turn the dreaded age with a 6 in the front of it. My kids are out of college. They're often, starting to do things, support themselves. There is nothing more flattering to somebody my age, or a little older or a little younger, than having somebody who's in their 20s come up and ask them to do something. The older you get, the less you function and think about all these conflicts people have. Those become less important. What becomes more and more important to you is your family and your kids. Well, every kid is our kid. Every kid is our legacy. And that's an awesome responsibility for you, which I know you never want to hear, because my kids certainly don't want to hear about it. But the fact is, you have an enormous influence. When somebody your age comes up and knocks on my door and asks me to do this or that, I'm willing to consider it. Not because I may or may not agree with them or disagree with them, because you're the legacy. You're the most important thing we leave behind. You have an enormous amount of power in this election if you're willing to do this. If you're willing to knock on 25 or 40 doors 3 or 4 times between now and the election, you should not underestimate how important it is to have somebody, a young person, come up and knock on the door and say, do you know what a difference you could make in this country? How many times have you heard a public figure who said, I decided to support Barack Obama because my kids kept asking me and insisting that I do it? It makes a big difference. And so with the power that you're about to acquire, when your candidate, this new generation candidate, takes the White House over, 48 years after John F. Kennedy did the same for us, with that new power comes the responsibility. You've got to make it happen. Because if you don't make it happen, it will not happen. People say the pendulum will swing in politics. My motto is the pendulum only swings when you get out and push it. It wants to swing now. America wants change. It will not change unless you get out and push it. Nothing ever happens unless you get out and push. That's what we need, is your help. And I'm just going to conclude by saying this. There are 2 jobs for the next President of the United States. And this goes beyond Iraq and fixing the economy and health care. The first job is to heal America. We have had 30 years of ugly, divisive, scapegoating politics from a party that put their own interests above the interests of the greatest country on the face of the earth in order to retain power. This is not about retaining power. This is about building a better country and a better world. And that's what this election is about. And we need to heal America. And we are. We're starting to reach out to people. That's your message. That's the young people's message. Stop fighting about the stuff that you don't agree on and do something about the things that you can change. You know, young evangelical Christians under 35, we reach out to evangelical Christians. You know why? Because you know what the top 3 issues are that evangelical Christians care about if they're under 35 years old? In order: poverty, climate change, and Darfur. Those are democratic issues, and we ought to be working with anybody, no matter who they are, who wants to do something about it. Give up any of our principles. I don't believe we ought to give up on women's rights or gay or lesbian rights. We don't have to give up those things, but there are things that we can work with other people on, and we should work with them to make a better world. And your generation is taking the lead in doing that. The second thing is that the next President of the United States has to restore the moral authority and the moral credibility of America in the world. Some of the most extraordinary things. The world that we have today has largely been built by America. It was built by Harry Truman, who said to George Marshall, yes, we will change the way things are done after wars and reach out to the people we conquered and rebuild their societies. That never has happened before. Who was built by John Kennedy, who began to pay respect to the Latin American nations that we had run roughshod over in the past. who was built by Lyndon Johnson, Medicare, Medicaid, civil rights, so that we could practice what we preached about democracy around the rest of the world. It was built by Bill Clinton and Jimmy Carter, who went to the Middle East and sat down with the Palestinians and the Israelis, and went to Northern Ireland and sat down with Protestants and Catholics to bring people together. You can't bring people together unless you have the moral authority to do it. And this country lost its moral authority with George Bush's presidency, and we are going to regain it when Barack Obama is the President of the United States. And we, the country,